Happy Friday, everyone. It's another Mavens of Manufacturing day today, and I'm really super excited, not just because Alex is here, but also this is our very first LinkedIn Live episode, so I'm really excited about that and ready to see how it turns out. But Alex, thank you so much for coming and joining us today on Mavens of Manufacturing. Can we get the conversation started off by you telling us a little bit about yourself and who you work with? I know I messed up the company name when I was promoting it, so I do apologize for that. But can you let us know who you are and what your company is?
Yeah, I'm so happy to be here, and no problem. The mistake was partially mine. That is the struggle of coming on board to a company during COVID when you don't get to do all the normal onboarding type stuff. And then you don't look at your LinkedIn for a long time because it's COVID. What's going on? Anyway, so yeah, my name is Alex Fillo. I'm the maintenance manager at PABCO Paper, which is a part of, the PABCO Pacific Building Products family of companies. And there's so many, and I honestly don't know the names of all of them and what they all do. But that's part of, as we come out of a little bit more of our tightened down, COVID policies, I will learn more about that. But as far as what we do here at PABCO Paper, we make paper, specifically paper for wallboard or gypsum board. No normal people really call it gypsum board, but it's in the walls. It's what you put behind your paint. And we make a variety of products, and so our paper grades are going to change depending on the type of board that it's going to go into. So the majority of our paper at this time goes to our internal customers. So PABCO itself makes its own board. And so we send our paper to a board plant where that paper gets put on the front and the back side of the wallboard. So that's what we do here. This facility also has the capability of making, a variety of other products. In the past, they've made chip paper, which is used for all kinds of backing on like paper, specialty papers, that kind of stuff. And then also liner board, which is what people think of when they have a cardboard box. The two flat pieces are liner board. So anyway, I know a fair amount about paper because that's what my background has been in, but we'll talk about that a little bit more. As far as what I do here, I'm the maintenance manager, so I'm responsible for both mechanical and electrical maintenance for the paper machine, as well as the auxiliary equipment, and then also the operation and maintenance of the boilers. So we do have 3 boilers right now. One of them is very old. I'm going to say early 1900s, but I don't remember the exact date. But it's one of the oldest boilers. It's still in operation.
Wow.
Yeah. And then we have 2 new boilers that we're in the process of commissioning. So one day we'll take that 3rd boiler out of service, the older one, and we'll just be running the 2 new boilers. So yeah, a variety of things I do in my day-to-day. It can be all kinds of stuff, from a really boring day where we're working on planned work and nothing really interesting happens. And then it could be 80% of the day, and we've already done our planned work. We're really getting towards the end of the day, and then something breaks on the paper machine, and then we're going to work late fixing it and getting it back running, because our paper machine does run 24 hours a day. So that is what makes my job interesting. So anyway, that's what I do in my current job.
I can't help immediately think of The Office when I hear paper company, and I'm just thinking of all the creative marketing materials that you could probably create surrounding that show. But I know it's probably a different paper than what they created.
Totally different. But
I work at a paper company.
I've been working in paper for, 8 years now. And I cannot tell you how many times that comment has been made. Props to The Office. They really got paper in people's minds.
And immediate connection.
And yet that is totally The Office. They're selling paper. They're moving paper around and selling it. So it's totally an end of the paper manufacturing process that I've never spent any time dealing with. And it's in a type of paper I've never dealt with. But
so funny.
Yes, it kind of relates to The Office.
Well, one of the things that I'm really excited to talk to you about, so I've talked to a lot of women in a variety of positions with different manufacturing companies, and I was talking to, her name's Allison, Varson, and she's from Out of the Box Manufacturing, and she's going to come on later in a later episode, and she brought up something that really made me go, huh, I didn't even realize that. And she said she's like, the women in the industry, she's like, a majority of them are in positions of sales and marketing. And it kind of set me back a little bit, because I was like, yeah, you're kind of right. Like, I noticed that even with a lot of the women that I've talked to, a lot of them had marketing positions. Some even started out, at the receptionist desk, had some experience in packaging, and really worked their way up the ladder. So they had experience in all things of the manufacturing company. But I think you're one of the very few women that I've had on so far that is actually on the operations side of things and dealing with the technical side of things. And I know when we initially talked, you were talking about some mentors that you've had that really helped shape your career. So can you kind of give us a little background of, how you got involved with manufacturing and engineering, and was it something you wanted to do all the time? Was it something that always interested you, like the STEM opportunities? And how did you get to that point to where you are now as a maintenance operations manager?
Yeah, so you're absolutely right. I just a little brief story. Having this title, I don't know of any women who have it my age or older. So anybody who's watching, if you know anybody who does what I do, let's connect, because I don't know many, especially not at this level. And there's a couple reasons for that, but no, it's very rare. I have definitely met more women in technical sales, occasionally, kind of a support role. And then you see some in production management who have worked their way up, but in the maintenance world, you just don't see that. And there's a few reasons for that. So hopefully we touch on that, but definitely if I haven't answered it at the end, let's come back to that. So I'll talk about my background and kind of explain how I got into this. So I went to college and I had no interest in manufacturing, just like most women, it seems. I did think I wanted to be a doctor. So I went that path. I did, all the pre-med stuff, biology, chemistry, math. I hated biology. So that was like step one of, I don't think being a doctor is going to work out for me. And so I dropped the biology. I took the whole first year and then I went, we're not doing any more of this. But I kept the chemistry and the math. And then I worked with my college advisor, and she really recommended I take an intro to engineering course, just because it was so broad and I can kind of check out, what I might be interested in. So I definitely dialed in a little bit on mechanical engineering. I was just within engineering, engineering is really broad. There's so many things you can do, but mechanical engineering is also super broad, but it doesn't involve things I didn't like biology. I kind of hit the end of the chemistry I cared to be doing. Math I really enjoyed. And so just kind of following what I was interested in and just seeing where it led. And so I took that intro to engineering course, which I ended up actually being a TA for the most of the rest of my college experience, just because it was so helpful. And then, continued to take the classes, and I was like, okay, I don't know how I'm going to use any of this, but I at least enjoy what I'm learning. And yeah, it was really difficult. Probably one of the hardest things I could have chosen to do, because none of it came naturally to me. But I kept doing it because I love a challenge, which is probably why I picked doctor in the first place. Anyway, so then I'm getting towards my junior year, and they're really pushing internships. They're explaining that internships are just really critical, and they are in the engineering world. It's very difficult to get hired without an internship. So my dad and my grandfather are both engineers. My dad sold industrial pumps most of my childhood, so I was always exposed to heavy industry at some level. Maybe I wasn't touring the facilities, but I was sitting in the parking lot while my dad was going and visiting, a customer or whatever. And then my grandfather worked for the Navy as an electrical engineer. So two technical people in my life who absolutely, gave an example of what it would look like having a job.
And I think real quick, just to interrupt you, I think that's an important point too, because there is this ongoing debate of when is too early to start talking about career pathways. So, you have these stages of kids' curiosity. And I think that's an important part, that your dad and grandfather had these backgrounds and you got that exposure at least. So you're
absolutely
kind of getting the gears going and helping nurture any of that curiosity within those areas.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I think, as far as exposure, there's a couple things when I look at what I do now, because I'll get dirty at work and it's loud and I got to wear PPE and, there's all these things. It's like, what led me to want a job like this? And when I was a kid, my parents would remodel and flip houses. And so like I was young and I was helping tile the bathroom floor and like I was getting dirty and doing all this demo and all these things that it just was never a discussion of like, oh, you can't do that. It's like, yeah, let's find an age appropriate task for you to help with and you just participate. And so I think all of that plays into what kind of job are you willing to consider? What kind of things, are you interested in doing? So yeah, I mean, all of that relates completely.
That's super fun. Like, just having them take on, like, just exposing you right away. You learn so many soft skills too doing that kind of stuff. So that's really cool. I wish I knew how to tile a bathroom, because our bathroom needs remodeling right now.
Well, and then you get older and all your friends want to buy houses to remodel, and they're like, oh yeah, it's just a bathroom remodel. And I'm like, oh, okay, have fun.
Let me know how that goes.
Yeah. You have a great understanding of what's involved.
So after all that stuff, how else did you move forward? Like, was there anyone else influencing what kind of career pathway you pursued?
Yeah. So anyway, looking at junior year internship, what do I do next? And I went to a career fair. My dad recommended I look into paper mills just because as far as industry is concerned, they have a little bit of everything. Most integrated paper mills have power generation, they've got steam production, they've got pulp manufacturing, and then you've got a paper machine, which is pumps and piping. And it's a mechanical engineer wonderland. Like no matter what you're interested in, there's something for you to do there. And it can kind of help you figure out what are you interested in doing. So I took that advice. I did get an internship at a paper mill an hour south of where I was going to school. And I worked there for the summer. Got an opportunity to work on engineering projects and then also on some work with our maintenance department and just get a little bit of exposure to all the different jobs that might be there, just little pieces to see if I wanted to make a career out of it. And then was offered a full-time position at the end of the summer. So I went back to school knowing that I already had a job at the end of my senior year, which was also huge. That pressure just completely gone. All you have to do is pass your classes, which is great.
Probably would have been a different story if you did not pass those classes. They're probably going to be like reconsidering this.
That's correct. But yeah, anyway. So that's kind of how I got into this. And the company I worked for, International Paper, they have a really big post-college training program where they bring in a lot of people either through internships or hiring them, after their senior year to come in and go through a 3-year development program. So that they have a really structured program specifically for training young engineers into a variety of career paths with the intention of kind of retaining the talent. Now, they don't always retain the talent, but that's okay. It's no harm, no foul. You stay, you learn, you grow, and then you move on to what's right for you. So my first job out of school in that paper mill was working in the engineering department, very structured, capital project development. You got to get the idea for the project from the process area. You got to develop the project with engineering. Usually an outside contractor would do the actual engineering design, and then the implementation would be at the mill level. And so that's what I worked on. And that was okay. It wasn't like my heart wasn't in it. I didn't love it, but it was a great way to learn, kind of the basics. And it's one of the few jobs that you really have all the skills to do right out of school. You'll know a little bit about project management, enough to be able to kind of plan out a project and figure out what the install is going to look like. And part of why I liked going into that department is I'd already worked for that manager. It was a woman who'd worked her whole career in maintenance and engineering. And I just thought that was really cool to come in and kind of work under her. And she did a great job of kind of explaining to me, just some pitfalls she'd fallen into, some recommendations she had. And it was really, really helpful to get her feedback on, here's this project you're going to work on. Here's some comments about how you might do it. But then also, hey, you're going to be working in this environment where, there aren't a lot of women, and, maybe think about this. Or I had long hair at the time. Hey, with regards to PPE, you need to make sure your hair is up, and just things that men aren't very comfortable talking to women about. And so that was really helpful at the start. Really helpful.
That's an interesting point too, because this conversation that surrounds hair, my it just is a matter of preference, right? So yeah. I can grow my hair out or shave my head. I've done it all. And my husband, he's just like, I really like your long hair. And I'm like, yeah, but you don't understand. Like, when you're trying to get stuff done in a timely manner, you just don't want to deal with that. But then, of course, with safety stuff, you don't want to deal with that stuff. You just want to be able to get your job done, not worry about it. And so, yeah, I know a lot of women who, they keep their long hair or they cut it off just for ease sake. And
for sure. I mean, I feel so much more put together after wearing a hard hat, having short hair versus when I had long hair, just because it's tough. Like, you got to have your hair pulled back and then you wear a hat all day and it's just gross. And
yeah. But I can understand why a guy might be like, how do I say this without being offensive or whatever? And it's really just tell us to be careful. That's it.
For sure. For sure. Yeah. It's not that difficult. Yeah. Anyway, so I started out with that, and that was again a request I made. Hey, I really liked working with Ruth, the engineering manager, and I wanted to continue doing that. So I did that for a while, and then I was like, I am interested in kind of checking out the maintenance area, and I'd like to work on a project if something comes up. So I was given an opportunity to do that. I went down and worked on a couple special projects, kind of supporting the reliability group. And they're kind of, at that point, they were a subset of maintenance. And then eventually they kind of moved into their own little department. But basically, investigating failures, understanding, why things failed, doing root cause failure analysis, and then also working on some PM development and just how do we keep our equipment running and optimize our uptime as much as possible. So I worked on that for, about 3 years total in engineering, and then reliability, kind of working back and forth on projects. And then when I'd been at that plant for 3 years, I was asked to make a career shift for kind of rounding out my skill set. And I was asked to go be a process engineer, which is typically a chemical engineering role in paper mills. And so that was definitely outside my comfort zone, not anything I had an interest in doing at that point in time. But wasn't given a ton of option either. It was like, hey, to kind of move into the next step, you need to do something to round out your career. And it's either like go on shift, which I didn't want to do, or go be a process engineer. So took that little shift and ended up working under a female production manager. So that,
which you don't see a lot of either.
So that paper mill is like the exception to all the rules. It has percentage-wise women way off the charts, which was a great place to kind of learn and grow. It's such a nice little bubble. But yes, very, very rare. And so she and I had started kind of around the same, she had started when I was an intern, but we'd kind of been around for about the same amount of time, and we knew each other socially, but didn't know each other really professionally. We'd never worked together much. And so, she'd never really worked with somebody that far into their career. She'd mostly managed people right out of college. And so there was this just awkward initial phase where she was giving me projects and it was like, these are way too easy. Yeah, I can do it, but I'm so bored. Because I have all this capability, but I also didn't have the skill set in what this job entailed. And so she did a great job of, we were constantly checking in, constantly having meetings, when I first started. And she just listened to, hey, I'm doing it. I'm doing what you're asking. I'm learning. I'm showing up. But we need to figure out how to use the skills I already have to at least give me something that's challenging.
Yeah.
And she was so good about listening to that. And that, that makes all the difference in management. It's just listen to what people are saying and respond and figure out what we could do. And so I went from my first day, my project I was given is make 2 signs to go across this catwalk opening so that nobody walks in this area when they're not supposed to. I'm like, okay, we got it. To a few months later, I'm filling in for her when she's out of town, and going and reporting out at plant-wide staff meetings. And then I got asked to, mentor a more junior process engineer who came on. And then I got asked to actually work in another process department, working on a big project. And so it just, I learned so quickly, again, because there was this back and forth and figuring out how we could use the skills I had to develop and grow. And the whole time she's like, are you sure you don't want to make this a career? You could do so good at it. And I'm like, yeah, but I just don't love it. Like, I can do it. I'm very capable. And so I'm glad I didn't say no, because I never would have thought I would have been so good at it. Like, definitely capable of exceeding expectations there, but just didn't love it. So she and I kind of, we'd had a 1 year kind of limit on this, and that was kind of the request, is I spent a year in the department. And then after about a year and a half, it was like, okay, so like, when is change going to happen? What's going to happen next? And she's like, I'm just not seeing like how it's going to happen. I think you need to go back to the maintenance engineering manager who initially set this whole thing up and tell him you're ready to go back under him and see what he could do. And so I did. I went, hey, you know what? You asked me to go over there. I learned some stuff. I did some things. I'm ready to come back. I know you'd kind of mentioned a role you had in mind and you haven't filled that role. So I'm assuming it's still available for me. And he's like, yeah, okay, I'm ready. Well, whenever you're ready. So let's do this. So people listening and creating these opportunities, like, I would have never, made it to where I am without all of these people thinking about my development and listening to what I wanted and what I needed.
That's such an interesting point too, because I feel like I was reading an article, and it was really interesting to me, because it said that, if a woman looks at something and she feels like she's not 100% qualified, she's not going to go for it. Like, there's this instinct within us where we have to feel like we're 100% qualified before we go and try something out. Whereas men, only 60, like, if they feel like they're 60% qualified, they're going to be like, yeah, I can do this. Let's do this. So they have like that built-in confidence to, okay, I'm not quite there yet, but I can learn and I can adjust and adapt. So I'm just going to try it anyways and let the cards fall where they fall. And I find it so interesting that they were like nurturing you as you went and kind of helped you build up that confidence level and helped you believe what you could do and what your capabilities are. So you were able to put yourself in an uncomfortable position, but you kind of needed that little nudge to do it. And I think that's interesting for manufacturers to think about, because if there's women on your shop floor who might not be stepping up for these opportunities, it could be because they're having a self-doubt moment and they need that little extra encouragement. So it's really highlighting the importance of mentorships. And I just want to shout out to Tracy Spencer and Will. Tracy said, it's never too early. Positive, proud exposure from the earliest memories of childhood from people that mean something to you. And then Will Healy, never too early to talk to kids. My kids, 9, 6, and 3, you're very busy, Will, are collaborating on a logo boost kit right now, and they all love the building and the programming. How could they not? That's really awesome. So yeah, I just feel like that additional encouragement is so important for women, because if I have that same mental aspect where, like, yeah, if I don't feel like I can complete something, I'm not going to try it.
Right. Absolutely.
Like, I can stay over there. My husband can fix that.
Yeah. And you know what? I was exposed to this idea of women not going for things, that they may not be fully qualified for, or not going until they're overqualified, really early on in my career. And so I'm not saying I'm perfect, but it is something that always is kind of in the back of my head when I'm thinking about the next opportunity, or I've applied to a few jobs, whether it was internally, with my old company, or applying for the job I'm at now. I push myself. I apply for things that I'm like, I'm close, but like, am I really there? And I listen to that internal talk and I just go, just apply. Like, worst case, they ignore it, because I'm aware that that's a thing I've got working against me inside my own brain. And it's difficult, and there's tons of self-doubt, but I just do it. I think
it's that whole sense of failure too. Like, if we fail at something, that means it's the end of the world, when really it's not. You just got to learn how to pick yourself up and adapt and keep moving forward. And so it's really great to hear that there's people out there in manufacturing already trying to, encourage people to try new things and just keep going and training. And I think that's important too, is that we need these types of training programs and internships and apprenticeships so that kids now can go to a job, learn as they're going, and not have that expectation of perfection. Like,
Absolutely.
this is a learning experience for you. If you mess up, that's fine. That's what this is all about, to help you be better. Getting into, your industry that you're involved with, and knowing that, there's not very many women, especially in the position that you're in, how has it been for you on a personal level, working pretty much in a man's world? Has it presented any challenges for you? Was it hard, to like stand up and say, I know what I'm doing, just trust me and let's get the job done? How has that experience been for you?
Yeah, so I'm just going to continue my career story because I can tell you all about that. So the job I took after I was a process engineer was really managing a maintenance crew that covered the whole facility. So I interfaced with every production department and every maintenance department. So we had maintenance departments for each production area, and then my department kind of worked with all of them. So I worked with my peers in the maintenance departments, and then also, with others. And I had pushback quite a bit, and it wasn't all the time, but there were many times that I was given feedback either from my boss's peers or my peers to my boss that was then given to me. And this is where I got to give a shout out to my last boss. He responded so well to, first day he was like, you're a woman, and I've really never worked this closely with a woman, and I don't know what to do. But he awkwardly stumbled through a conversation of don't let anybody make you feel uncomfortable without telling me about it. And then he's like, I'm there for you. I want you to succeed. So he gives me this feedback quite a few times, actually. And eventually it was like, hey, you know what? This is maybe the second time you give me this feedback. And I spent a lot of time thinking about it. And I'm just going to leave that feedback with you. And I'm not going to take it because I don't agree. I don't agree that that's feedback you would give somebody who was a man. I don't think that was feedback you would give somebody who's older. And I don't think I did anything wrong. I think somebody was uncomfortable with me in that space doing that thing that other people are doing. And that's not a me problem. I'm acting within the culture. I'm doing what I need to do for my job, but I'm not going to not do my job because somebody is uncomfortable that I'm doing my job. And I have to be able to come to work and do my job because somebody hired me to do it. And somebody thinks that I'm good at it. So, yeah, I mean, and that's a thing that, God, it was so uncomfortable to do that the first time. And then the second and the third time it got easier. And then by the end, my boss is like, well, I have to tell you this, but I know you're not going to do anything about it. And I'm like, probably not, but at least we've talked about it.
Right. You did your job by telling me about it. Thank you.
Yeah.
Tracy's been commenting again. She's like, my earliest career-focused memory is second grade, a caricature that I drew of myself and my teacher absolutely saying, yes, you can do that. These early and often affirmations are needed. And then she said, thank you for being so candid. We need to meet these subjects head on. And we will not be able to attract women unless women talk about what was difficult, what worked, what didn't work, and what we can do better. So
I totally agree.
I think that whole dynamic of having, either whether you're a male with a female boss or a man boss to a woman, I think that needs to be addressed too. It's okay that you're of different genders, that's okay. Just have those uncomfortable conversations. I remember I was on a podcast and they were like, well, what can we do to get more women involved in these conversations? I'm like, just ask them. Yes. Just ask us.
That's correct.
We'll participate in the conversation. It's fine.
and really the comment I have is, if you ask more people to be involved in the conversation, at some point women will be involved in the conversation. Yep. I mean, it just spread the net wide. And it's very very weird.
It's just it's super fun. It's super funny. But I'm glad that you're like most of your experience has been positive, and I think it's really important too to point out that one of your main mentors was a guy,
That's correct.
because we need everybody working together if we want to start closing these skills gap, and every one of us needs to be an advocate for manufacturing career opportunities. And one of the things is um, the unawareness of the opportunities that are available.
That's correct.
And you had the exposure at a young age because your dad and your grandfather are involved with it. And I'm wondering if you have any insight or ideas on how to create awareness around specific positions like this that really get girls excited about being on the technical side of things and the operation side of things.
Yeah, so I've spent so much time talking and thinking about this since I, agreed to be on this. And I've talked to my husband about it. I've talked to everybody I can think of about it. And I just had this realization this morning when I was driving to work and I'm listening to an audiobook because I'm a big nerd and I love historical fiction. And I'm listening to this audiobook set in World War II. And it's about this woman who works in a shipyard. And I'm like, you know what? Why are we racking our brains about this? We did it successfully. Women made World War II successful by working in technical manufacturing jobs. So we as a culture just have to decide that it's a priority, and it has to be everybody. And really the government has to be involved. I mean, that's clearly what made that successful, but also everybody's got to believe that it's important. But there's really no excuse because we did it already.
That's so interesting too, because I was listening to a conversation in IMEC, which is an organization in Illinois that focuses on manufacturers. They had a presenter and she was talking about the percentage of women in manufacturing during that time, and we were close to 50%. 50% representation. And I'm glad that you brought it up too, because my logo and my branding is to pay tribute to that era, because it did open up opportunities for us in engineering and manufacturing positions. And I think you're spot on. We need to create a sense of urgency around it, as well as just, provide them that sense of pride too, of what you're doing is actually going to provide value somewhere else. It's something to stand behind. It's like when you cheer for your favorite sports team, like, come on, get on board and cheer for your manufacturers, and let's get ahead of the competition and be that powerhouse. Because I'm probably showing my age here, but I remember back in the late 90s, early 2000s when everything just took a dive, and my dad was in manufacturing, and the company he worked for, like, it devastated our community when all of the companies shut down or laid off 50% of their workforce. Our community became more dangerous. We weren't producing any goods. No one wanted to move there. So everything was just terrible. And then it's making a comeback now, which is really interesting to see. And a lot more technical companies are coming in, and that's where it seems like the industry is going. But I wanted to ask you too, like, because we're on this topic, in your opinion, when women decide not to pursue these opportunities, how does that affect the overall sector? Like, what do we provide within the sector that maybe our male counterparts kind of fall short on? And I'm not trying, I just want to put a disclaimer out there. I'm not trying to push men out of there, but I am competitive, and I just want to beat. I just want to beat,
right?
Yeah, I just want to beat your presence in the sector. I'll be honest about that.
Yeah. So there's two things. I'm going to go back a little bit and talk about just as far as manufacturing. We have a few issues. We have the women in manufacturing issue, but we generally have a how do we attract people into manufacturing jobs issue. And then especially, U.S. manufacturing, we have a problem, and it's become an even bigger problem because of the COVID-19 pandemic. We do not have as much manufacturing in the U.S. as we used to. And as a result, we have less people working in manufacturing jobs. And it's kind of created this weird cycle where if people want to bring manufacturing back to the U.S., they're having a hard time attracting people into the jobs. And it's just kind of it's this horrible cycle. But in general, we have a problem, and it's going to be a bigger problem as more and more people retire. Every facility I've ever been to or toured, you look at the average age of the workforce, it's getting older and older. You're not bringing in as many young people. And eventually that's going to become a crisis. And the way we respond to that crisis will be the deciding factor in whether or not women are present in manufacturing in the future. But hopefully we do it smartly and we bring in 50% and we really market ourselves equally to men and women. But that's a thing that we as an industry have to decide. All of manufacturing has to decide to do that. And as far as things women bring, I mean, I think just in general, our culture develops the soft skills of women way more than they develop the soft skills of men. When I look at women who are in leadership roles, I see that they're more able to handle uncertainty and change just without really thinking too much of it. Not to say men can't do that, and there absolutely are men who have exceptional soft skills when it comes to interpersonal relationships. It's just women tend to be developed in that way a little bit more. And then, in general, I think that just a diversity of thought, men or women, is just really important. And I don't see as much of it in manufacturing. It tends to be, a lot of people who are fairly technically, skilled, people who go to work in manufacturing, no matter the role, probably worked on cars as they were growing up, and they, got dirty a lot. And it just this kind of exposure and skill set that leads into working in a manufacturing or heavy industry environment. So we need to get women doing that. Let's get girls, working on cars. Let's get girls, going to Lego competitions and working on robotics. And there's all this stuff out there. It's just, parents also play a role in what are their kids, push towards. Do you push your daughter towards sports exclusively, or do you kind of round out those extracurriculars? Say, we do a sport half the year and we do something else in the winter or whatever. Just thinking about what do you want your kids' whole life to look like versus what do I just care about, middle school, high school? Are we just trying to get them to a sports scholarship, which, your odds may be what they are. But I just see a lot of parents focusing on this one thing. It's there's scholarships for all kinds of stuff. But even more, what is your kid's long-term going to look like if all you do is push sports?
That's definitely the next step, I believe, especially with manufacturers themselves. So I see a lot of manufacturers investing some of their time and their efforts into marketing who they are as a brand to their potential customers, which yes, your customers should be a priority. But if you don't have the workforce to continue what you're doing, then you're not going to have customers because you won't be around anymore because no one will build your products. So I think we definitely need to open up conversations with parents so we're not just educating students, but the parents as well. I know when I was growing up, my mom did a really good job encouraging us to try things out, but she also tried to shelter us from certain things because she was afraid that we were going to get hurt. And another conversation that I had with Allison from out of the Max Manufacturing, she was like, when I was growing up, I did the typical playtime with Barbies and dolls and stuff, and my brother was playing with things that he had a Rector set and Legos and all that stuff, and he's like, she said we need to encourage that same type of design creation type of play with girls as well too. And I think Lego did a good job doing that because they started making sets with color palettes that would be more desirable by little girls, with the pinks and the purples and the pastel colors, which I think is good. But I think if we can connect the bridge between manufacturers starting at middle school and get them involved in FIRST Robotics because they do that Lego competition that's really good. Get them involved with that. That would help out a lot. This is reminding me of a conversation that I had with a gentleman too. His name is Darren Mitchell, and he was talking about how he had women work in his manufacturing facilities and he would promote them to the team lead. And he was like, they were always my best worker. They always did really well problem solving. And he's like, that's why I wanted to promote them. He's like, but from the moment I promoted them, within a week, something would happen where they just became overwhelmed or stressed out and they ended up leaving the industry. And he's like, it always happened within a short amount of time after promoting them. And he's like, I never knew why, and I don't understand. I still to this day don't really know that answer. And it became this ongoing joke, like, oh, if you want to get rid of the women in here, just promote them and then they'll leave. So I'm wondering if you have any insight on that, because my opinion to him was, I was like, being a woman, if I don't have, affirmations of that I'm doing a good job or whatever, I feel like I'm not doing the right thing. So I work really well with positive affirmations, because if I think I'm not doing a good job, then I'm going to be like, what's going on? Do they like hate me? So some of the bosses that I've had, we've had to have that conversation where I'm like, you haven't said anything, and they're like, well, nothing's wrong, so why would I say something to you? Like, you're doing a good job. And I'm like, oh, okay, that's what your silence means. And I was like, well, if you can just every once in a while be like, hey, good job, thumbs up, that would make me confident that I'm doing a good job. So I told them that. I was like, maybe you weren't saying good job enough to them, so they thought they were failing. And I know if women feel like they're failing, they're not going to continue moving forward in that direction. What is your opinion on that? Like,
yeah, so I mean, and everybody's a little different. But yeah, in general, especially in a field where you're underrepresented and you feel like you're an outsider and you have to try harder already to do your job. I mean, I know personally, I felt that, yeah, unless somebody tells me I'm doing a good job, or we have really clearly laid out expectations and I'm hitting them and we're meeting to verify that I've hit them in the desired way, that, yeah, I'm going to feel like I'm not doing something right. And really that started for me back in engineering, getting my degree. I mean, the way that engineering is traditionally taught is there's a curve. And especially in mechanical engineering, I had some older teachers who were retiring as I was going through their classes. And it was not at all uncommon to have the average on a test be 35, 40%. So if you get back a test with 35% on it, and you don't know what that curve is yet, and you're one of 3 women in a class of 120, you feel like you should not be there. Because that's the feedback you're getting on that piece of paper. It's like 40%
so
failing. So
that's
it
so
starts
true.
there. And really thinking about the inclusivity of like, how do you teach people before they even go into these jobs? I mean, already I'm an outsider. There are way more men in that class, and I think it would be easier to be a man receiving that grade than a woman, where you're like, oh, there's nobody else here who looks like me. Maybe I'm not cut out for this. And I mean, I'll admit there were some rough days after getting test grades back. I look back at that and I'm like, yeah, that's clearly an old school way of doing it. It's been that way for, decades, but it's got to change. And thankfully, people know that it has to change. You're starting to see more female professors. Schools are working on being more inclusive with the way they teach engineering. And so that's changing. And already I know the school I went to, Oregon State, they're doing a great job of changing that experience. But for me, it was rough. It was really rough. And especially when I went into my job, yeah, there was a lot of like, I just need a little bit more feedback. Can you give me something about this? And every person is a little different about how they do that. But over time, everybody figured out what kind of feedback I needed.
I think that's a really good point too, is that some of the people that I've talked about, when they start their classes with the students, they let them know, like, you're going to make mistakes and you're not going to get it right the first time. That doesn't mean that you're not meant to be here. Like, we're going to learn through these mistakes and walk through them. This is a learning experience. You're not getting paid for this. It's okay. Just that extra reassurance. And it just kind of reminds me too, when I was growing up, how I always wanted to get A's and B's on my report cards, because I knew that would make my mom really proud. And then with my brothers, they're like, if I get a C, it's great. I'm still passing and I'll be fine. It's just like, why is this a thing? Like, why are they so like relaxed about, getting that C, and they're it's passing, it's fine. I'm just like, no, you should be getting So it's so funny how things start at a younger age. We are coming up on time.
Yep.
Unfortunately, it's been such a pleasure talking with you, Alex, today. And I'm really excited because I feel like your experience is going to inspire, more women to try out the technical side of things and the operation side of things, because we need more women in those types of positions and have them feel comfortable. So before I let you go, is there any advice that you would like to provide any women, considering engineering or manufacturing, or who might be struggling in their class with that 35 test score? Like, what sort of advice can you give them?
I mean, it's just general life advice, right? I mean, if it's what you want and you think that you would be good at it, go for it. Don't let it stop you. Whether it means retaking a class, if you really do fall below that 30%, you're getting towards the 20s or whatever, it's okay. It doesn't come perfectly to everybody. And just because you look different than everybody else doesn't mean that it's impossible. You've got to decide what your path's going to be. And at some point, some people aren't cut out for certain things, and that's totally fair. And it's okay to say no, if it's unhealthy for you, to continue on a path. But at the same time, look for mentors, look for people who can be in your corner, whether it's somebody you met once upon a time, or you got to go find them on the internet and be like, hey, can I pick your brain? Can you give me any advice? All of that helps. And everybody has an idea of what they need or might want to kind of help them along the way. And then having a good support system, right? I mean, like, develop your friend group, develop your family to help you, whatever that may look like, and ask for what you need.
And tap into the Mavens network
Yeah.
and look at all the other women who are involved with manufacturing and engineering. There's
For
my
sure.
shameless plug there.
Yeah, but
Well,
things like this are great.
Well, thank you again for taking the time out of your day. I really appreciate it. And to all those who commented during the show, thank you. I know there was some other comments that I left unread. I'll go through those real quick. Tracy said, IMEC is MEP. I work for an MEP in Ohio. The MEP National Network is working hard to bring all underutilized citizens into our manufacturing community. That's awesome.
Also,
Will was like, you can convince a young person, but if parents aren't convinced, they will end up following mom or dad. So true.
Yep.
And then he said, I got a B in physics in college with a 12%.
Yep, that's the stuff I'm talking about. It's got to change.
That's fantastic. And then Tim said, great job. Thank you for sharing. So thank you to all those who tuned in live. Really excited that we were on LinkedIn and able to share your story. A couple announcements. Mavens of Manufacturing will be hosting a live event at a high school. We're going to be pulling in different experts. It's October 22nd. Starts at 9 a.m. You'll be able to access that live here on LinkedIn, YouTube, and Facebook. So more information will be coming out about that. Anything else before I let you go, Alex?
No, this has been great. And very, very glad we could do this.
Fantastic. Well, thank you, everyone. Have a great weekend and tune in next week for another Mavens of Manufacturing. Have a good weekend. Bye, everyone. This episode of Mavens of Manufacturing has been sponsored by Z Ink Solutions. Z Ink Solutions. This isn't your grandmother's copywriting service. We provide copywriting and copy editing services that provide impactful text and memorable storytelling for a variety of brands and industries. Contact us today at zinkSolutions.com. That's z-inksolutions.com.